So here in the northern hemisphere, we're approaching very quickly the fall equinox. As part of our practice, we pay attention to the equinoxes and solstices. We consider them days of power because they're times when the energy and the weather shift, and we can use them to help us gain insight into different aspects of our practice, different aspects of our own personal growth, and different aspects of how the world is growing as a whole. So it's very useful to use these milestones. They create a wonderful regular pattern for us to follow, and our mind loves patterns. That's where it feels very comfortable. It just says, okay, what's the situation? How do I adapt? What's going to happen next? So by utilizing these days of power, the 2 equinoxes and the 2 solstices, we can utilize that part of our mind that's always seeking to figure things out, that wants to know what to expect next. So today, because the equinox is coming, our fall equinox, I want to talk a little bit about that particular day of power. And it's not really just a day. It's a whole few weeks of transition. So don't ever feel like you missed it because you didn't look up online, like, what exact time is the equinox happening in my time zone? And then you say, oh shoot, I missed it. It was yesterday. It's okay, because it's a period of time, typically a couple weeks before and a couple weeks after, and we can plug into this shifting, this movement that's happening. So right now what we're feeling is the sun energy, the masculine energy, is really having its last hurrah of, I'm in control, I have the power. And now the moon energy, the divine feminine, the goddess energy, is now rising up and becoming equal. So equinoxes are a time of equality between male and female, sun and moon, movement and stillness. So at times of equinox, it's an excellent time to check in on your balance and notice if you feel too heavy or too light in one direction. Are you moving constantly and never resting? That means you're out of balance. Are you just caught in a state of lethargic, where you're just stuck and you're having a lot of trouble moving? You're just in that state of waiting, that passivity. Then you need some movement. Maybe you just need to get up and walk around. Maybe you need to just dance for a little while and allow yourself to feel the movement of your body and your heartbeat and your blood and your oxygen moving through your system. And that can help bring you out of that state of inertia and bring you into balance. So that's one thing to look at, regardless of whether it's spring equinox or fall equinox, is, are you balanced? Are you giving equal weight to all the different aspects of your being in an appropriate way? I should say, maybe equal weight isn't the right word. It's, are you giving the proper amount of attention to all the things in your life so that you can be balanced? And sometimes it can be helpful to write these things down. Like if you're just feeling completely out of control, completely off kilter, then just allow yourself just to brain dump everything that's happening on a piece of paper, everything that you've been actually doing, everything that you feel like you need to be doing, but maybe aren't, and see where you're off balance. And then you can very slowly start to reintegrate these things. Now, fall equinox in particular is all about harvest time. We've had this long growing season where we planted seeds long ago during the winter solstice. They started to sprout in spring. They really started blooming at summer. A lot of movement, a lot of energy. And now it's time to practice humility. To take that very honest and deep look at what have I got going on now? Like, what has grown up? What has manifested in my life? What are the strong points of my practice? How is my mind feeling? How am I interacting with others? All these different aspects of our life. Fall equinox, and the fall in general, is a time to assess our harvest, what we have to work with. Because if this was long ago, then we'd be looking at winter is coming. So do we have enough food? Do we have enough firewood? Do we have enough shelter? Is our shelter in good shape? The basic necessities of life. That's programmed into our genetic memory. So we can actually use that instead of fighting against it if we approach it with humility and openness. We can actually use that impulse to check on our supplies and take this time to make this honest assessment of where we're at. Not so we can beat ourselves up or say, I'm not where I want to be, which that's the habit, right? That's the common thing. We start comparing ourselves to other people. We start comparing ourselves to who we were a year ago. And that's not helpful, it's not useful, and it's certainly not honest, because who you were a year ago is somebody completely different than who you are now. So it's no different than trying to compare yourself to some other person, because that's exactly what you're doing when you compare yourself to a past version of yourself, is you're comparing yourself to somebody else. It's not who you are now. So this time of harvest, this time of fall equinox, this time of balance is an excellent time to really take a look at who am I right now? What have I accumulated? And is it still serving me? Are these things that I want in my life? And I don't mean just the material stuff. I mean the emotional states that you visit and cling to. I mean the thoughts that keep tumbling through your mind, the things that continue to pull your focus. All of that is part of your harvest. So you can take some time and really examine this in a rather detached way, because gets tricky. This is part of our mindfulness practice, where we want to be able to look at what actually is without the mental modifications, without the filter of what you think it should be. So this is where that humility and that honesty comes in. Being willing to just take that assessment, and it can help to kind of retreat to that witness consciousness. that part of you that's one step removed, and just look at yourself as if you were looking from the outside and say, okay, how is this person doing? What do they have to work with? What have they acquired or accumulated? What have they grown this year? And now we have all these seeds from what has grown. And this is the moment where we decide, am I going to take these and store them? Am I going to actually collect them and put effort into collecting those and keeping them going, keeping that cycle going? Or is this a pattern, a possession, a thought form, a mental formation that maybe has served its purpose? It's done. Maybe I don't want to carry it on into the new year. So at that point, we can tie up the loose ends. We can, rip out the weeds at the roots and then dispose of them properly. And we do this starting now, because we're a couple weeks out from the equinox. We continue to look for a couple weeks past the equinox, and then we move into action. We actually start doing this, like start clearing out and making space and cultivating that which we want to plant. So by the time we get to winter solstice, we're ready to actually put those seeds into the earth. We're ready to offer them to the full goddess energy of potentiality. So use your mindfulness practice to really explore this. And when it gets overwhelming, which it can happen, I know for a long time I would always feel this wave of depression every fall. It's like, what is happening? Where is that coming from? And I always thought, oh, it's my birthday coming. I was born in November, so I always figure, oh, it's just because I'm getting another year older and I'm like doing the typical human thing of looking at everything I didn't accomplish so far. But I realized it's really this energy of letting go, this falling away. And there's always a little sadness when we let something go, even when it's healthy for us to let it go. There's still a sense of grief, because at one point we loved that thing enough to let it into our life. So when we let it go, of course there will be some grief, there will be some sorrow, sadness. And if we can remember that, oh, grief is just love. It's just the love that has nowhere to go anymore. We can then take that feeling of love and put it into that which we want to grow. We can honor what we've let go of, acknowledge it, notice it, and then say, okay, I have this energy moving through me now, let me invest it in something bright and happy that's going to bring into my life that which I want to create, that which I want to experience. Now this process of creation is happening through us all the time. It's a 24/7, 365 kind of process. This energy is moving through us, and most people, their energy stays in the physical, so it moves rather slowly. It takes a long time for things to happen. But when we enter in on the spiritual path and we start to be able to activate the Kundalini, we start to be able to pull the winds from the physical world from the surface, and we're able to pull it into the central channel, it combines with that Kundalini energy, and then things start to happen much faster. There can be a little delusion that can happen too, because we start to recognize that, oh, I'm making things happen. And then we start to feel like we're the only one making things happen. And then we get really frustrated when we're trying to make something happen and we're hitting all this opposition and it's not happening. It's because everybody has the same exact creative power that you do. Everyone. And we're all here together, creating constantly. So we can get really caught up in the manifestation game. We can get into power battles with people who are also trying to manifest something else. And it can be very draining. But what I've found in my life, in my practice, and what I discovered a long, long time ago, is what really brings me ecstasy is just feeling the creation happening. It's not that I have to create anything in particular, just feeling that energy of creation and destruction moving through me is what's wonderful. But it's helpful to understand how it's working because it's directly tied to your third eye. So the energy comes out, it can come out your navel center. That's the center of power that many people work from when they're trying to create things. And that's the realm of war. That's the realm of domination, where we just take our power and we push it out through the navel center and we just try to force things to happen. And that's why we have so much war, that's why we have so much violence in this world, is because many people live from that third chakra. But as this planet's awakening, that energy's starting to move up. It has been for a very long time, but it's really starting to reach an interesting point. And the heart chakra is actually an inlet, so the energy is coming in and helping feed the energy that will ultimately go into creation. So in a sense, the heart chakra is actually about destruction, because it's just taking everything in and destroying it, turning it into pure energy. And we feel that, especially if you're an empath. Just all the energy just comes into your heart and you feel this person's joyful, this person's depressed, that person's angry, this person's in a silly mood, and you feel that laughter, and it all just comes in. And if you get hung up on resisting it, it's very painful. But if you recognize it for what it is part of the process of creation and destruction. It's just energy that's flowing into you and being broken down into pure energy, and it's mixing with all the rest of the energy in your being at the surface, and then it's dropping down into the second chakra and mixing with the Kundalini and coming back up. And then some energy can come out of the throat chakra, but it's very small opening. It allows us to communicate. That's how we're having this conversation right now. throat chakra. But where it can come out in a big way is through the third eye. This is where we can actually dream entire realities into being. It's through the third eye. So what we hold in our mind, if we start to project through our third eye, whatever we're holding in our mind gets imprinted out into the world. So again, this is why mindfulness and mind training are so important. Because many people have minds that are full of suffering, full of hurt, full of pain. And that just gets projected out. And so it perpetuates the system and cycles of suffering. And people don't even realize they're doing it because they don't have the awareness of how this process works. So this point in time of the fall equinox, of harvest, it's a really good time to check in and look at what types of mind states, what types of thoughts are you holding in your mind and projecting outward? Because they're imprinting on your reality. They're creating this world in which we're living. And again, it's not just you. So yes, take full personal responsibility, but at the same time realize that every single other person on this planet is also projecting at the same time. But we can't control anybody else's projection. But we can control our own. We can pay attention to what we're holding in our mind, how we're seeing ourselves, how we're seeing other people, and how we're seeing the world. And that will come to fruition the more we do it. Now again, like I said, we can turn our practice into this game of manifestation. Some people get really, really good at it. And they can actually project their dreams out of their third eye in such a strong way that other people fall into that dream and start believing it and start feeding that dream. You know, we see that in politics, we see that in history, we see that in many, many different types of situations where somebody is just able to project through their third eye in a very strong way. But it's exhausting to do it. And it actually stops your spiritual growth. Because all this energy is coming up through the Sushumna, all your Kundalini, and then it's just getting spread out into this physical world. And it stops right there. No more growth. So if you're interested in spiritual growth, it's good to be aware of that because some's going to leak out. We have to maintain our bodies. We have to maintain some type of self-image in order to interact with one another. We have to maintain some kind of projection of the other people that we're interacting with. You know, this is a whole different class, but a good tip is to treat every person that you meet as if you've never met them before. And just allow that to be open. So instead of projecting your version of them onto that person, don't do it. Just hold that back. And say, I don't know who you are, let's find out together. And then you have this whole different experience of people, even people that you've known for 20, 30, 40 years. And sometimes it's very interesting because you might find out, wow, I really like this person. I never realized how much I like them. And then other times you realize, whoa, I really don't like this person. How have I spent the past 10 years with them? And you realize it's because you have just been living with your own projection of that person, and you never actually saw them. So this can be very useful. But to get back on track, if you want to experience spiritual growth, we want to keep from projecting too much from the third eye. We want to hold that energy there and just let it keep building and building and building in that sixth chakra, without trying to manipulate and make everything happen, without this aggressive insistence that things go a certain way. That we just allow the energy to rise and build and build and build and build. And then without us even having to do anything but that, eventually it builds up enough and it just pops through the crown chakra. And the cycle is complete. And we become the cycle of creation and destruction and creation and destruction, just flowing over and over again. And it's glorious, and it's beautiful, and we see everything as it is without imprinting our idea of how we think it should be. And then, as I said, at the same time, there'll be that little bit that leaks out through the third eye, through the throat, even through the power center. But it's minimal. It's enough to allow you to exist on this physical world and interact with it in a positive and progressive way. So, play with that, see where it takes you.